Hello and welcome to Module 7, Part 1, Childcare Program Operations. Our objectives for this module are to provide participants with a general overview of the business of childcare, including personnel management, program development, fiscal administration, and marketing, and an understanding of the rules and regulations that govern childcare operations. So we're going to be talking a lot in this screencast around the business of childcare. And then we'll talk a little bit about rules and regulations as they relate to each of those topics. So when you are planning on opening up a center, the first thing that you need to do is collect some information. And you want to know this because you need information on the number of families that are in a community, the number of working families in a community, number of recent marriages, number of new housing, the geographic concentration of families with children, income distribution, number of small and large businesses, and school census data. And why is this information important? Because this information is what you use to predict future child care needs. And according to the Census Bureau, over 60% of preschool-age children are going to participate in some sort of preschool program in their lifetime, and this number continues to grow. So it's really important that you're assessing the needs before you open up a child care center in any given location, because if you don't do this and you open up a child care center in an area where there are already 5 other child care centers, you might have a hard time being successful. So that's exactly what you need to do. You need to examine the other child care programs that are currently operating in any given area, and you need to be aware of what services they are offering or they aren't, because you need to stand out, and this is important in order for you to be successful. And services really should be dependent on the community needs. They should be based on the children's interests, and they should work to promote children's social, emotional, physical, and cognitive development. If you don't stand out, you are going to have a hard time getting enrollment. So once you decide to open a center and you've already assessed the needs of the community, you need to be well aware of these 4 topics. And we're going to talk about each of them individually and go into a little bit more depth. So personnel management and human resources covers recruitment and retention, hiring and firing, supervising and scheduling, staff development and training, and any compliance with labor laws. So I think this recruitment and retention piece is actually really important. And I think one of the biggest things that you should be mindful of when you are recruiting and trying to retain staff is that staff reflect the program goals and philosophy. So an example of this is if you are a staff member and you believe in play-based learning, but you start a job in a very academic-based preschool, are you truly going to be happy there? We know that programs function best when the staff understand the program philosophy and believe in it. So you should be including some questions around philosophy in the interview process. Staff quality and performance are actually critical to the success of the center. And we also know that salaries and benefits obviously are going to impact retention. So retention is whether teachers stay or not. Some of the benefits that impact retention and recruitment are listed on this slide and include things like vacation leave, sick leave, personal leave, paid maternity or paternity leave, paid trainings, at conferences, retirement plans, and even professional development days for some teaching staff. Retention can also be tied to staff scheduling, childcare discounts, work attire, location, and even there are some centers that offer perks, such as discounts at other organizations. All of these are important to understand when you are recruiting staff, and they are helpful in getting staff to stay. And various programs offer various different things in terms of benefits. When you are recruiting, you should include the following: the job title, brief job description, qualifications, deadline for applicants and requests, and how to contact. Some possible places that you could recruit staff are college job boards, referral agencies. Indeed.com is a big one, but you really need to understand staff qualifications, and we are going to do an activity on this in our weekly Zoom meeting this week. So on the flip side, well, I guess it's not really the flip side because it's hiring and firing, you should have processes in place for both hiring and for firing. Hiring processes should include some of what is on this slide from 1 to 10. However, I can tell you that in the field we have a workforce shortage, so hiring doesn't generally look like this, because generally we're in high need of early childhood teachers, and staffing ebbs and flows when you're working in programming. For firing, it's important to understand that state and federal regulations around the termination of employment. In Colorado, we are at will state, which actually means that employees can be terminated from a job without determining reason or just cause and without notice. No matter what, the center should have clearly outlined policies and procedures, and employees should be made aware of them, and usually this is done upon hire in terms of what you have on file for the employee handbook. Supervising and scheduling can take up a lot of a program director's day. Most centers are open for 10 to 12 hours daily, and you need to be covering care for children in that 10 to 12 hours. And staff scheduling really can depend on how many children are present at different times throughout the day, but that's not always a concrete thing, and sometimes that's really hard to nail down. We also know that working with children is both physically and emotionally challenging, and staff tend to be less effective after 6-hour shifts. 8-hour shifts are going to require at least a half-hour break and a 10-minute break for every 4 hours worked. A part of hiring, too, in supervising and scheduling is making sure that staff are very clear on the job responsibilities and that they know who they report to, what their responsibilities are, and how to determine if those responsibilities have been met. So this is all really important conversations to have when you are hiring staff. Additionally, another piece of this is staff development and training, because we now know that research shows that provider training is related to quality of care. So the more intentional training and support that staff receive, the higher quality of care they're able to offer. Right now in the state of Colorado, you all have to take pre-service training in order to stay in your job, and that includes building safety, biohazard safety, OSHA, child abuse and neglect, safe sleep, and abusive head trauma. However, licensing also states that you need to participate in 15 hours of training throughout the calendar year. Here are some examples of training that you can participate in. You all right now are participating in the CDA, which is a type of training. In the Denver metro area, we actually have a lot of community trainings that are available to you, especially that are through the councils, so the Denver Early Childhood Council, or if you're in Arapahoe, all the different districts have councils that you can get training through. PDIS is another place where you can get training through our professional development information system, which we will talk more in depth about in Module 8. There's also licensure and certification processes that you can go through in terms of training, like for things like ITERs and ECHRs. And then school. School is actually staff development and training, so completing an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a master's degree. There's a wealth of stuff out there. I will share with you the link to the Denver Early Childhood Council training log in our, catalog in our weekly meeting. So, part of running the center is also staying in compliance with labor laws. All hourly employees must be paid time and a half for anything over 40 hours a week, and you need to be mindful of break times. And that goes back to that staff being ineffective after 6 hours of work, and they need at least a half-hour break working 8 hours, and then a 10-minute break for every 4 hours that they work. So fiscal administration deals with money, and it's a really important part of running a center because you have to consider budgeting, forecasting, enrollment projections, how you're going to purchase and bill pay, childcare reimbursements, and tuition collection, and payroll. So when starting a center, you need to develop a financial management plan. Generally, there are 2 types of budgets that you're going to have, which are startup and operating. Startup is the one-time costs like major equipment, renovation, utility deposits, and down payments, and you need to cover about 60 to 90 days of operating costs. Operating are going to reflect spending priorities. They're the expenses that will occur monthly and how you will meet them. So this includes things like salaries, food, utilities, rent, supplies, etc. So you should have both of these anytime you are looking to operate a center. Your primary source of income is going to be fees and tuition. So this is something that you really need to consider how you're going to cover the cost of your monthly budget through fees and tuition. You will essentially use the first year of your operating and startup costs to determine how much money you need to be successful. And if they don't balance, you may need to consider raising costs or where you can cut costs. You can also look into other sources of revenue like grants, partnerships, special programs, but be sure that you may go many months up in a year before your center is full. You also be mindful of forecasting. So this is just when you are considering things like typical vacations or holiday breaks when enrollment might be lower, so that it may impact how much money you are bringing in a month. Also, you should always incorporate your annual fees and registration into your budgets. You should also have fiscal policies, and they should cover things like payroll, bill collection, and tax reporting. So you would want to know in terms of bill collection when you're going to collect tuition payments, how you're going to handle it if parents fall behind, whether you're going to charge for holidays, vacations, and illnesses. This should all be written down and clearly communicated to parents. And you should also determine payroll, so when you're going to pay staff. Another piece of operating a center is marketing. So you need to know how you're going to advertise, how you're going to recruit, how you're going to handle tours, and then we're going to talk about customer service and social media. So in order to be successful, you do need to work on a market plan. You need to purchase a service. You're needing to provide a service that customers want and are willing to purchase. So that's your childcare business. And you are probably going to need marketing to achieve this goal. So here's some ways that you could market your center through flyers and brochures, television, newspaper ads, radio, business cards, referral agencies, networking, yellow pages, or classified ads. The internet is huge now. Just note that it could take up to a year to fill a center completely, and part of enrollment recruiting is tied to marketing, but it's also tied to program quality. You're going to have an easier time filling up a center if you have a higher quality center, and word of mouth helps with that. Your program philosophies and curriculum is important and impactful, and you should know how to provide a quality center tour. So a typical center tour consists of greeting a family, showing them around, introducing them to the primary teachers, giving them information on the program, answering questions, giving them a tour packet, and always following up with a phone call or an email after they tour. It's important to remember that parents are going to make judgments about your center upon first appearance, so you should have some curb appeal, which those questions are listed to the side. You should introduce yourself by your name and state your role. You should greet the family by name, and you should work to address and meet the needs of the family while they're there on the tour. Remember that this is a customer service-based industry. You need to always take the time to listen to parents' concerns and show respect. You need to be friendly, even through the phone. People can tell if you're smiling. You need to train your staff on not only how to give tours, but how to provide customer service and how to answer the phone. You need to be responsive, and you need to always be asking for feedback and use that feedback for improvement. Social media is big: Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, all of these things will support you in marketing your center. All right, that's it for this week. Please complete your discussion question. You're going to collect information on licensing, which we'll talk about in our weekly Zoom meeting. Other than that, have a great week.